when we went to break, I was telling you about the morning show doing these specials on secret societies and doing a different one every day. And today they had done one on Freemasonry. And, of course, they were in the Freemason building in D.C., and they were talking about that. And the gentleman said, the Freemason said, that there were 33 degrees. Now, I have interviewed Freemasons ex-Freemasons who say that's not true. There are higher degrees than that, and they are even more private and more ritualistic. And I was wondering if you had any comment on that.
Well, Johnny, first of all, there are actually dozens of Masonic orders. This gentleman was probably from the Scottish Rite.
Yes, he was.
It has about 3.5 million members or so in America, and many others around the world. So it is the largest. But there's the Grand Orient, a lodge in Paris, France. There's the Grand Lodge of Jerusalem in Israel. There's the United Lodge of England. First of all, can we believe anything this gentleman said? Let me quote to you from my book, Codex Magica, where I quote Dr. Albert Mackey, the editor of the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. Now, if anybody would know, it would be the editor of the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, Dr. Albert Mackey, who is a 33rd degree. And he's also a former sovereign grand commander. Listen to what he says. He says that secrecy, silence, and deceit, in other words, hoodwink, that's what they call it, is an absolute necessity so that the mysteries of our art, they call it an art, should be preserved. Manly P. Hall, let's go to Albert Pike, because he was another former sovereign grand commander. Right. He says this, he wrote, Masonry, like all the mysteries, conceals its secrets from all except the adepts and sages or the elect, and uses false explanations and misinterpretations of its symbols to mislead those who deserve only to be misled, to conceal the truth from them and to draw them away from it. And then finally, George Steinmetz, he's another Masonic author, he says, quote, there is a secret doctrine in Freemasonry. That secret is concealed rather than revealed by the very lectures which Masons are told offer a rational explanation of the ceremonies of initiation. In other words, even in the lower degrees, they progressively lie to these people, and they give out what they call a little bit of light, a little bit more light in each of the degrees. You see, they have these occult ceremonies as they move up. So, in fact, in the first degree, which is the entered apprentice degree, I have an actual drawing from a Masonic manual on page 21 of my book. It shows a candidate, and he has a blindfold over his eyes and a cable tow, a rope around his neck, because symbolically the manual says, this is from the old Masonic manual, Duncan's Masonic manual, Richardson's, there's several that I quote in here, says that he's hoodwinked. Himself, he's hoodwinked at the very beginning. So you start off as a Mason having a blindfold put over you, being hoodwinked. Mm-hmm. I don't think I don't think I'd like to be a Mason and be hoodwinked. But because you see, these people do have secrets they want to conceal, and they're very, very wicked things and very demonic, and I cannot blame them at all for wanting to conceal them. The fact that for the 33rd degree they drank wine from a human skull as they were on their knees before a huge granite stone altar with huge mosaic images of serpents on the wall. I don't think I'd want to tell my friends about that either. I wouldn't want to go to church and they say, what did you do last night? Oh, well, I drank from a human skull and I worshiped some serpents that were emblazoned on the wall and got on my knees before a black stone altar. I don't think I want to tell people either. But, hey, that's what Robert Schuller did, the pastor of the Crystal Cathedral. That's what Billy Graham did. That's what hundreds of men have done. That's what Trent Lott, senator from Mississippi, did. That's what Jesse Helms, senator from North Carolina, 33rd degree Mason, did, and many, many others as well. Then there was George W. Bush, who laid naked in a coffin.
In a skull and bones.
In the Order of Skull and Bones, which is nothing but just a more satanic imitation of Freemasonry. So, and by the way, their very building, is the tomb, and it sits adjacent, and I have pictures of it, next to the cemetery off the campus of Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. So I'm sure that Bush, he doesn't want to get on national TV and they say, tell us about Skull and Bones. Oh, well, you get naked, you lay in a coffin, and drunk people are around, and you have skulls and bones of dead people, in boxes lying all around. He doesn't want to tell people that because it makes him look, well, like a nut, like an idiot, or worse.
Well,
so that's that. But I can see. People are because of the Da Vinci Code book, people are really intrigued by this. But I wish they would get the truth rather than listening to the liars of Freemasonry. And by the way, they have to lie. They're told to lie. Because you, Johnny, and everybody listening to me who's not a Mason is said to be vulgar and profane, coarse people who deserve, as Pike said, only to be misled.
Let me ask you this. Now, I know that the Masons and many of the other all the secret societies rely on black magic and witchcraft and these various symbols. So what type of witchcraft do they actually use? They talk about good witch, bad witch, white witch, black witch, which is absolute nonsense. I mean, you can't have a good witch. It's an oxymoron, like a Christian Mason. It's an oxymoron. You can't have that. But I know they have some practices in Masonry and other secret societies that are actually satanic and witchcraft oriented. And is that because they go back to Babylonian times and Sumerian times where they worship this, or is this their way to get in touch with what they consider a higher power that's better than our God, our Jesus?
Well, Johnny, all of those things apply because in all of the Masonic and the other secret society literature, it all goes back to Babylon. Now, this is very fascinating since the Bible itself in Revelation 17 describes the last-day spiritual system that envelops the whole earth as mystery Babylon the Great, mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So, mystery Babylon. What went on in Babylon that became the basis of all the ancient mystery religions of ancient Greece and Rome, and Egypt, and on over into throughout Samaria and on into the Far East, and even to the Americas? What went on was human sacrifice. What went on was sex cults, where priestesses and let's just call them customers had the sex act and called it holy. And then there was, of course, homosexuality that was rampant in all of those cultures and was considered a religious rite by many, as sodomy was. So if these things are part of Masonic and other secret society rituals, then we can expect those things, and that's what we find. And that's what I show in Codex Magica. You find all of the trappings. Now, one of the interesting things, and this is not prejudice to say it, I'm just quoting, if Freemasonry is a worthwhile, charitable, wonderful organization of great men, and that's what they picture themselves to be, then if that's so, we have to ask why their former sovereign grand commander, now remember, the number one guy, Albert Pike, all of the 33-degree rituals were designed by him back in the 19th century. He says at the foundation of Freemasonry is the study and the practice of the Jewish Kabbalah, which is a system of occult magic that the Jews got from Babylon. Now we go back to the mystery religions of mystery Babylon. And the Jews who were captive there for 70 years, you can read about that in the book of Daniel and so forth, and the book of Jeremiah in the Bible, and rather than obeying God, they were in captivity. I don't know why some of them became so evil when they were there. Now, there were some who were still faithful to God. The prophet Daniel. Remember the story of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego?
Right.
They refused to worship the golden image. These were great men of God. They were also Hebrew. But there were some that became jaded and said, you know, I like these gods of the Babylonians. I like the Kabbalah religion they have. And so they took up the Kabbalah, and they kept it up until when they went back to Jerusalem, so much so that even Jesus himself said that they no longer followed God, but they had the traditions of men and were of their father the devil. The traditions of men, that means that what they took in from Babylon. So we have the true people of God, and certainly Jesus' apostles were men of Israel for the most part, and from that lineage. So we're not talking about a racial thing necessarily, but it is a shame. Just as the Germans were polluted by the Nazis, now we have the Jewish people polluted by these Kabbalists. And that's true even to today, because Phariseeism is basically Kabbalism. And Pike said that that's at the very foundation. Now, here's the interesting thing. No matter where I turn, whether it's the Church of Satan, the Temple of Set, the Rosicrucians, the Alta Vendita over in Europe, the Order of Skull and Bones, no matter where I turn, Priory of Zion, I find the basis of it is the Jewish Kabbalah.
And again, Tex, you don't mean Jews in general, and I know that, but I want the listeners to understand. We're talking about a small group of people who actually are behind a Zionist type of movement, and it's not, again, Jews in general. So when we talk about that, you have to understand this is a group of people who have a lot of power, and they are somewhat, as you said, Tex, they're like the foundation of many of these secret societies, that their whole belief system is being used by these secret societies.
Yes, now here's the great danger, though. Just as not every German was a Nazi, nevertheless, a majority of the Germans were seduced by flattery. And this is interesting, too. The book of Daniel, we go back to prophecy, says that this last day's king, that he will not worship the God of his fathers, but instead he will worship a false god, the god of forces, okay? And that he will win his kingdom, his seat, by flattery. Now, it's flattery to tell a race of people you are superior to all others. Everyone else on earth, all the other races, are inferior. They're like cattle. And that's what the Jewish Talmud, their holy book, says. Now, I don't believe that every Jew believes in that. But every Jew that buys into the holy book of the Jewish Talmud then are buying into that. Just like not every Muslim buys into jihad, holy war. But by believing in the Quran, you have to accept all the parts of it. And therefore, you ask yourself, again, what does the Kabbalah say? What does the Talmud, which are the two major systems for the Jews, what do they say? Both of them